Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Starbound and stared at the massive object floating in space ahead of them. The thing was huge, bigger than anything he had ever seen before. It looked like a ship, but it was old. Very old. How big is it? Jake asked his crew. Lisa Grant, his communications officer, checked her readings. She was a young woman with short brown hair and quick eyes. Captain, it's about 50 kilometers long. That's 10 times bigger than our ship. Jake whistled softly. The Starbound was already one of the largest ships in the galaxy. This ancient vessel made it look like a toy. Standing next to him was Crixtal, a bug-like alien with 4 arms and big black eyes. The Jektar were known as the best navigators in space. Captain Morrison, Crixtal said in his clicking voice, this ship does not match any design in our records. It is not from any known race. On Jake's other side, a creature that looked like living crystal hummed with a musical voice. Shardsinger was a Velnari, one of the smartest engineers in the galaxy. The materials are unknown to me, she sang. The metal shows signs of great age, but it still has power running through it. The 4th alien crew member floated near the ceiling. Cloud Whisper was a Nithari, a being made of gas and energy. The Nithari were the best diplomats anyone knew. This presents a mystery, Cloud Whisper said in a voice like wind. A ship this old should be dead in space. Jake nodded and turned to Lisa. Any signals coming from it? Lisa shook her head. Nothing, Captain. It's completely silent. But the scanners show there's definitely power inside. The Starbound was on a routine exploration mission in the outer edge of the Kepler 442 system. They were supposed to be mapping new star systems for the Galactic Council. Finding an ancient alien ship was not part of the plan. Jake had been a starship captain for 15 years. He had seen many strange things in space, but nothing like this. The ship ahead of them was shaped like a long blade, smooth and dark. There were no visible engines, no weapons, no communication arrays. It just floated there like a sleeping giant. Can we dock with it? Jake asked. Shardsinger's crystal body flashed different colors as she thought. There appear to be docking ports, but they are very old. I cannot guarantee our systems will connect properly. Let's try, Jake said. This could be the discovery of the century. It took 3 hours to carefully move the Starbound close to the ancient ship. The docking was tricky because the alien vessel was so much larger. When they finally connected, everyone held their breath. Docking complete, announced Pete Harris, the pilot. He was a calm man who never got excited about anything. Seals are holding. We have a connection. Jake looked at his mixed crew. The Galactic Council required all exploration ships to have crews from different species. It was supposed to help everyone work together and share knowledge. Jake liked his alien crew members, but sometimes he missed having other humans around. All right, people, Jake said. We're going aboard. Standard exploration protocol. Everyone stays together. No one touches anything without permission. They put on their environment suits and moved to the airlock. The passage between ships was dark and cold. When they stepped onto the alien vessel, their lights showed corridors that stretched away into blackness. The gravity is working, Lisa said with surprise. It feels almost like Earth normal. The air is breathable too, added Dr. Ben Carter, the ship's medical officer. He was checking his instruments. Oxygen and nitrogen mix just like home. That was strange. Most alien ships had different atmospheres and gravity settings. This ship seemed designed for humans, but that was impossible. Humans were new to space, travel compared to the other races. They walked down a long corridor. The walls were smooth and dark, made of some material that seemed to absorb their lights. There were no doors they could see, just smooth surfaces everywhere. I don't understand this architecture. Crixtal clicked nervously. Where are the control panels? The access ways? The maintenance shafts? Shardsinger touched one of the walls with a crystal finger. The material is unlike anything in our databases. It appears to be some kind of living metal. Cloud Whisper drifted ahead of the group. I sense great age here. This ship has been sleeping for a very long time. They walked for an hour through endless corridors. Every passage looked the same. There were no signs, no markings, no way to tell where they were going. Jake was starting to worry they might get lost. "Captain," Lisa said, "I'm not getting any readings on my translator. Usually it picks up something from any alien technology, but this ship is completely blank." That was very strange. The universal translators were designed to work with any known technology. They could interface with computers, read alien languages, even communicate with artificial intelligences. But here they got nothing. "Maybe the ship is too old," Jake suggested. "Maybe it's from before the time of the current galactic civilizations." They found what looked like a large room with a high ceiling. In the center was something that might have been a control console, but it was unlike anything they had seen. It was a smooth, curved surface with no visible buttons or screens. "This might be the bridge," Jake said. Krikstal tried to scan the console with his equipment. "I cannot read any of these systems. The technology is completely foreign." Shardsinger approached the console and tried to connect her crystal matrix to it. "There is no interface I can recognize. It is as if the ship does not want to talk to us." For the next 4 hours, they tried everything they could think of. They used every scanner, every analysis tool, every communication device they had. Nothing worked. The ship remained silent and unresponsive, like a giant metal tomb floating in space. Jake was getting frustrated. This was the greatest discovery in galactic history, and they couldn't even turn on a light switch. 3 days had passed since they first boarded the ancient ship. Jake Morrison was getting tired of walking through dark corridors that led nowhere. His crew had tried everything they could think of, but the ship stayed silent and dead. Lisa Grant stood in front of what they thought was the main control panel. She had been working on it for hours, trying different combinations of touches and gestures. Her translator device lay useless on the smooth surface beside her scanner. "This is hopeless," Lisa said out loud. She was tired and frustrated. "We've tried everything, every single piece of equipment we have, and nothing works." Behind her, Krikstal was clicking his mandibles nervously. The bug-like alien had been trying to map the ship's layout, but every corridor seemed to change when they weren't looking. "Perhaps we should return to our ship and call for help," he suggested. Shardsinger's crystal body flickered with dim light. The Velnari engineer had been analyzing the walls for 3 days straight. "I have never encountered technology like this. It is as if the ship exists in a different reality from ours." Cloud Whisper drifted near the ceiling, his gaseous form swirling with frustration. "I have tried to communicate with any intelligence that might be here. There is no response to any of our diplomatic protocols." Jake rubbed his eyes. He was starting to think they would have to give up and report their failure to the Galactic Council, the greatest discovery in history, and they couldn't even get past the front door. "Maybe the ship is just broken," said Dr. Ben Carter. He had been checking for any signs of life or artificial intelligence. "Something this old might have lost all its programming." Lisa slammed her hand on the control panel in frustration. "Open up, damn it!" she shouted at the unresponsive surface. "We're not here to hurt you. We just want to understand." Suddenly, the entire room filled with light. Everyone jumped back as the control panel began to glow with soft blue patterns. The walls around them lit up with flowing designs that moved like living things. A gentle humming sound filled the air, like music made by machines. "What did you do?" Jake asked, staring at Lisa. I just yelled at it," Lisa said, her voice full of surprise. The patterns on the walls grew brighter. Then, to everyone's amazement, a voice spoke. It was not coming from any speaker they could see. The voice seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Welcome," the voice said. It spoke in perfect English with no accent they could recognize. "I have been waiting for you." Jake's mouth fell open. "It's speaking English. How is it speaking English?" Krikstal tried to say something, but no response came from the ship. Shardsinger sang a greeting in her musical language, but again, nothing happened. Cloud Whisper tried several diplomatic phrases in different galactic languages. The ship ignored all of them. But when Lisa whispered, "Hello," the ship immediately responded. "Hello, child of Earth," the voice said warmly. "You have found me at last." Jake stepped forward. "Who are you?" What is this ship? The ship's voice was calm and friendly. I am Keeper. I am the guardian of this vessel. I have been waiting for your species to develop enough to reach me. Our species? Jake asked. You mean humans? Yes. You are the ones I was told to wait for. Your voices carry the proper resonance. Your genetic patterns match the records. Lisa looked confused. What records? Humans have only been in space for a few hundred years. This ship is millions of years old. The lights around them pulsed gently. Time moves differently for us, young one. What seems like millions of years to you was but a moment of sleep for me. Crixtal tried again to communicate with the ship, speaking in the common galactic language. The ship did not respond to him at all. It was as if he had not spoken. Why, doesn't it talk to them? Jake asked, pointing to his alien crew members. Their voices do not carry the proper patterns, Keeper explained. They are not of the line I was programmed to recognize. Only your species has the correct vocal signatures and genetic markers. Jake was amazed. A ship that only responded to humans? That seemed impossible. Humans were the newest species in the galactic community. They had learned space travel from other races. Can you show us around your ship? Lisa asked. Of course, Keeper replied. All systems are now activating for your comfort. The room around them began to change. The walls became transparent, showing views of space outside. Control panels rose from the floor, displaying information in languages that looked almost like ancient human writing. The air became warmer and more comfortable. The atmospheric mixture is now optimized for human biology, Keeper announced. Gravity has been adjusted to Earth standard. All environmental systems are functioning normally. Dr. Carter checked his instruments with excitement. The air is perfect now. Temperature, humidity, oxygen content, it's exactly what we need. Jake noticed that his alien friends looked uncomfortable. The changes that made the ship perfect for humans made it less comfortable for them. Can you adjust things for our other crew members too? Jake asked. I can create separate environmental zones, Keeper replied. But the primary systems will always be calibrated for human needs. That is my primary programming. Lisa walked up to one of the new control panels. The symbols on it looked familiar, like a mixture of ancient Earth writing systems. How do you know our languages? How do you know about humans at all? Your creators programmed me with extensive knowledge of your species, Keeper said. Our creators? Jake asked. What do you mean? Those who made you. Those who made me. Those who scattered the seeds of your species across the galaxy and then departed. The room fell silent except for the gentle humming of the ship's systems. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying someone created humanity? Not created, Keeper corrected. Guided, shaped, prepared. Your species developed naturally, but with certain genetic modifications to ensure you would become what was needed. Shard Singer's crystal form flashed with confusion, but when she tried to ask a question, the ship did not acknowledge her. What were we prepared for? Lisa asked quietly. To find me. To awaken the Guardians. To fulfill your destiny when the time comes. Jake looked around at his crew. The aliens seemed frustrated and left out, unable to communicate with this amazing discovery. But Jake was starting to understand that this was bigger than just finding an old ship. Keeper, he said, what exactly is our destiny? The ship was quiet for a moment. Then Keeper spoke, and his voice was serious. To stand guard against the darkness that comes from beyond the stars. To be the sword and shield of all life in this galaxy. Your training begins now. Jake Morrison stood in the center of what Keeper called the memory chamber. The walls around him showed moving pictures of star systems, planets, and strange creatures he had never seen before. Lisa Grant was working at a control panel that had appeared just for her, asking Keeper questions that were making Jake's head spin. So you're saying that humans were designed? Lisa asked, her voice uncertain. Not designed, Keeper replied patiently. Guided. Your species evolved naturally on Earth, but my creators, the architects, made small changes to ensure you would develop certain abilities. Dr. Ben Carter was taking notes as fast as he could. What kind of changes? Changes to your vocal cords, your brain patterns, your genetic structure. These modifications were so small that your scientists would never notice them. But they were very important. Jake's alien crew members stood at the edge of the room, looking frustrated. They could hear the conversation, but every time one of them tried to ask a question, Keeper acted like they had not spoken at all. Crixtal clicked his mandibles in annoyance. This is very strange, Captain Morrison. Why would an ancient race care only about humans? The Jektar have been spacefaring for thousands of years before your species even invented the wheel. Jake felt bad for his alien friends, but he was also fascinated by what Keeper was telling them. Keeper, who were the architects? What happened to them? The pictures on the walls changed to show tall, graceful beings with long limbs and large eyes. They looked a little like humans, but taller and more elegant. Jake could see them building great cities and flying between the stars in ships that made the current galactic fleet look primitive. The architects were the first intelligent species in this galaxy, Keeper explained. They appeared millions of years ago and spread across thousands of worlds. They were peaceful explorers and builders. Were? Lisa asked. What happened to them? They detected something coming from outside the galaxy, something that destroyed other galaxies completely. The architects called it the Great Hunger. Shardsinger's crystal body flickered with interest, but when she tried to ask about this threat, Keeper did not respond to her musical voice. Jake was starting to understand why his alien crewmates were getting upset. Keeper, why won't you talk to my friends here? They're good people and they want to help. I am programmed to respond only to the inheritor species, Keeper said. The other races in your galaxy are not equipped for what is coming. What do you mean, not equipped? Jake asked. The pictures on the walls changed again. Now they showed the current galactic races, the Jektar, the Velnari, the Nethari, and others. Each species was labeled with information that Jake could somehow read, even though it was written in symbols he had never seen before. The Jektar are excellent navigators, but they avoid conflict, Keeper explained. The Velnari are brilliant engineers, but they think too slowly. The Nethari are wise diplomats, but they cannot fight physical battles. All the current galactic species have great strengths, but also great limitations. And humans? Lisa asked. Humans are different. The architects studied your early ancestors and saw potential. You adapt quickly. You solve problems in unexpected ways. You do not give up when things become difficult. Most important, you can work together even when you disagree. Jake thought about human history and winced. We've had a lot of wars. We're not always good at working together. True, Keeper agreed. But when faced with a threat to all humanity, you unite. The architects saw this pattern in your early development. They saw that humans would fight fiercely to protect not just themselves, but other species too. Cloud Whisper drifted closer, his gaseous form swirling with frustration. He spoke in several different languages, trying to get Keeper's attention, but the ancient AI ignored him completely. This is becoming problematic, Cloud Whisper said to Jake. How can we report this discovery to the Galactic Council if the ship will not acknowledge most of the galaxy's species? That was a good point. Jake was starting to realize this discovery could cause problems. Keeper, the other species in the galaxy are our friends and allies. We work together. We're all part of the same galactic community. That is good, Keeper said. You will need their help for what is coming. But only humans can activate and control architect technology. Only humans have the genetic markers and vocal patterns that we programmed into your species. What genetic markers? Dr. Carter asked, his medical training making him curious. Specific patterns in your DNA that allow you to interface with our systems. Vocal cord structures that produce the exact frequencies our computers recognize. Brain chemistry that matches our neural interface protocols. Lisa was studying a display that showed human genetic information. Are you saying that every human has these markers? Most humans, yes, the modifications were built into your species at the genetic level. As your population grew and spread across Earth, The changes became standard in your people. Jake was trying to process all of this information. So humans are... what? Some kind of living key for architect technology? You are the inheritors, Keeper said. The architects prepared you to carry on their work when they could no longer do it themselves. What work? Jake asked, though he was starting to suspect he knew the answer. The walls around them went dark for a moment. When the lights returned, they showed images that made Jake's blood run cold. He saw entire star systems going dark, planets being stripped of all life, and fleets of ships unlike anything in the current galaxy. The Great Hunger comes, Keeper said, his voice serious. It has consumed 3 galaxies already. It learns from everything it devours, becoming stronger and smarter with each victory. The architects calculated that it would reach this galaxy eventually. When? Lisa asked quietly. Soon. My long-range sensors have detected the first scout, ships entering the outer rim of this galaxy. The full invasion will begin within your lifetime. Jake felt sick. How do we fight something that destroyed entire galaxies? With architect technology, with human crews, with the weapons and ships that have been waiting for you to claim them. Crixtal finally managed to get Jake's attention by tugging on his sleeve. Captain, what is this AI telling you? Your face looks very worried. Jake realized he would have to explain everything to his alien crew. But how could he tell them that according to this ancient ship, only humans were equipped to save the galaxy? Keeper, Jake said. There are other ships like you? Many others. Dozens of fleets waiting in hidden locations throughout the galaxy. All of them will only respond to human voices and human genetic patterns. The architects prepared an entire armada for this moment. And they're all waiting for humans to find them? They are waiting for humans to be ready. Your species has grown quickly, but you still have much to learn. I am here to begin your education. Lisa looked up from her control panel. What kind of education? How to command architect vessels, how to use weapons that can hurt the Great Hunger, how to coordinate the defense of an entire galaxy. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. And if we refuse? Keeper was quiet for a long moment. Then all life in this galaxy will end, just as it ended in the others. The Great Hunger does not negotiate. It does not show mercy. It simply consumes everything and moves on. Jake looked at his alien crew members, who were watching him with growing concern. Then he looked at Lisa and Dr. Carter, who seemed as overwhelmed as he felt. Keeper, he said finally, I think we need to contact Earth and the Galactic Council. Everyone needs to know about this. Yes, Keeper agreed. It is time for humanity to take its place as the guardians of the galaxy. Your real journey begins now. Jake Morrison felt like the universe had just become a much scarier place. He stood in what Keeper called the war room, looking at displays that showed the edge of their galaxy. Red dots were moving slowly through space, and each dot represented something that wanted to destroy everything he had ever known. How long do we have? Jake asked. Keeper's voice was calm, but Jake could hear the worry in it. The first scouts arrived 6 months ago. They are studying your galaxy's defenses and mapping the locations of inhabited worlds. The main force will arrive in approximately 5 years. Lisa Grant was working at a console that showed more information than she could understand. 5 years to prepare for something that destroyed entire galaxies? That doesn't seem like enough time. It is not, Keeper agreed. The architects had thousands of years to prepare, and they still had to flee. But you have advantages they did not have. Dr. Ben Carter looked up from his medical scanner. He had been studying his own genetic information since Keeper revealed the truth about human modifications. What advantages? The architects were peaceful. They had never fought a war. Humans have been fighting since your species began. You understand conflict in ways the architects never did. Jake thought about human history. Wars, battles, struggles for survival. Maybe all of that violence had a purpose after all. Tell us about these things that are coming. What exactly are we fighting? The displays around them changed to show creatures that made Jake's skin crawl. They looked like a mixture of machine and living tissue, with too many arms and eyes that glowed with cold light. Some were small, like humans. Others were huge, the size of buildings. The Great Hunger is not one species, Keeper explained. It is a collection of everything it has consumed. Every time it destroys a civilization, it takes their knowledge, their biology, their technology. It adds everything to itself and becomes stronger. So it's like a virus that learns? Lisa asked. Much worse than a virus. It thinks. It plans. It remembers everything from the species it has destroyed. By now, it has the combined knowledge of thousands of different civilizations. Krikstal had been listening to Jake translate everything for the alien crew members. The bug-like navigator clicked his mandibles nervously. Captain, this threat you describe sounds impossible to defeat. How can anyone fight something with the knowledge of thousands of civilizations? Jake passed the question to Keeper, who responded immediately to his human voice. The Great Hunger has a weakness, Keeper said. It cannot truly understand the species it consumes. It can copy their technology and use their knowledge, but it cannot think like they did. It fights like a machine following patterns. And humans don't follow patterns? Dr. Carter asked. Humans are chaos, Keeper said, and Jake could swear the AI sounded amused. You do unexpected things. You make decisions that do not follow logic. You fight in ways that cannot be predicted. This is why the architects chose your species. Jake walked over to another display that showed the layout of the ancient ship around them. It was enormous, with sections he had not even seen yet. Keeper, you said this ship is a weapon. How does it work? This vessel is more than a weapon. It is a command ship, designed to coordinate the defense of an entire galaxy. But it requires a human crew to function properly. How many humans? Lisa asked. Minimum crew is 50. Optimal crew is 200. All must have the genetic markers. All must be trained in architect technology. Jake did some quick math in his head. There are about 12 billion humans in the galaxy right now. How many of them have these genetic markers you talk about? Approximately 97%. The modifications were very successful. That was good news, at least. But Jake was starting to understand the size of the challenge ahead of them. How many ships like this one exist? 47 command vessels like this one. 300 battlecruisers. Over 2,000 smaller ships, all waiting in hidden locations throughout the galaxy. Shard Singer had been listening to the translation, her crystal body flickering with different colors. When Jake repeated her question, Keeper gave an answer that surprised everyone. The other species will have important roles to play. Jektar navigational skills will be essential for coordinating fleet movements. Velnari engineering knowledge will help maintain the ships. Nethari diplomatic abilities will be needed to organize the galactic defense. But they can't operate the ships themselves? Jake asked. No. Only humans can interface with architect technology directly. But the ships will need mixed crews to function at full efficiency. Cloud Whisper had been quietly listening to everything. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Captain Morrison, this AI is telling you that humans must lead the galaxy's defense? Jake nodded, feeling the weight of that responsibility. That's what it sounds like. This will cause problems with the Galactic Council, Cloud Whisper warned. Many species will not want to follow human leadership. Humans are still considered newcomers to galactic civilization. That was something Jake had been worried about. Humans had only joined the galactic community 300 years ago. Most of the other species had been spacefaring for thousands of years. Keeper, Jake said. What if the other species don't want to work with us? What if they think humans are too young or too violent to lead a galactic war? Then they will all die, Keeper said simply. The Great Hunger does not care about politics or pride. It will consume everything equally. Lisa was studying a new display that had appeared. Keeper, show us what happened to the other galaxies. Show us what we're really fighting. The room went dark. Then images began to appear that made Jake wish he had never asked to see them. Entire star systems being stripped of matter. Planets reduced to empty husks. Billions of beings turned into more of the Great Hunger. The Andromeda Galaxy fell in 37 years. Keeper said. The Magellanic clouds lasted 19 years. Each time, the Great Hunger grew stronger and faster. How did the architects escape? Dr. Carter asked. They did not escape. They transformed themselves into something the Great Hunger could not consume. But in doing so, they ceased to exist as we knew them. Only their ships and their knowledge remain. Jake felt cold. What did they transform into? Pure energy. They joined with the cosmic background radiation of the universe. They became part of space itself, but they lost their individual consciousness. It was a form of death to save their creations. The room was quiet for a long moment. Jake looked at his crew, both human and alien, and saw the same fear in all their eyes. Keeper, Jake said finally, we need to contact Earth and the Galactic Council immediately. We need to start preparing for war. Yes. But first you must learn to operate this ship. You must understand architect technology. You must become the commanders the galaxy needs. How long will that take? For basic operations, 3 months. For full mastery, several years. But the Great Hunger will not wait for you to be ready. Lisa looked up from her console. Then we better start learning fast. Jake nodded. He was a starship captain, not a galactic war leader. But it seemed like the universe had other plans for him. Keeper, he said, begin the training. Show us how to save the galaxy. Training protocols activated, Keeper replied. Welcome to your new destiny, Guardians of the Stars. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison first stepped aboard the ancient ship that now called itself Heritage. The name change had been Keeper's idea, to honor humanity's new role as inheritors of the architect's legacy. Jake stood on the bridge of Heritage, but he was no longer just a captain. The Galactic Council had promoted him to admiral after emergency sessions that lasted for weeks. The news of the approaching Great Hunger had changed everything in galactic politics overnight. Admiral Morrison, Lisa Grant said from her new position, as the first human architect interface specialist. We're receiving signals from the other hidden ships. 17 more have been activated by human crews in the past month. Jake nodded, watching the tactical display that showed the growing human fleet. Each new ship that came online was a small victory, but they still had so much work to do. How many humans are in training now? Over 10,000, Lisa replied. They're coming from every human colony in the galaxy. Some are leaving their families behind to learn how to operate architect technology. Dr. Ben Carter approached from the medical bay. He now served as the chief medical officer for the entire human fleet. Admiral, I have the latest genetic screening. Results. We've tested over 1 million humans in the past 6 months. Keeper was right. Almost all of them carry the architect modifications. That was good news. They would need every human they could find for what was coming. Crixtal scuttled over to Jake's command chair. The Jektar navigator had adapted well to working with human technology, even though he could not operate it directly. Admiral Morrison, my people have completed the navigation charts for the Outer Rim territories. If the Great Hunger follows, the same patterns it used in other galaxies, we now know where they will attack first. Jake had learned to appreciate his alien crew members even more in the past months. While only humans could control architect ships, the other species brought skills that were just as important. Jektar navigation, Velnari engineering, Nethari diplomacy, they all had roles to play in the coming war. Thank you, Crixtal. What do your calculations show? They will likely strike the outer colonies first, using them to build more of themselves before attacking the core worlds. We estimate they will reach the first human settlements in 4 years. Shard Singers, Crystal Form approached the group. She had become the chief liaison between human crews and alien engineering teams. Admiral, we have completed modifications to 15 Galactic Council ships. They cannot use architect weapons, but they can now coordinate with your fleet communications. Jake was proud of how the different species had learned to work together. The initial fear and suspicion had given way to cooperation as everyone realized the size of the threat they faced. Cloud Whisper drifted down from the ceiling where he had been monitoring long-range communications. Admiral, I bring word from the Galactic Council. The vote has been completed. Humanity has been granted emergency leadership authority for the Galactic Defense Initiative. That had been a difficult political battle. Many species were uncomfortable with humans taking charge of military operations. But when Keeper demonstrated architect technology to the full council, and when long-range sensors confirmed the approach of the Great Hunger, even the most stubborn politicians had to accept reality. "Any opposition?" Jake asked. Some grumbling from the Corvani delegation, but they agreed to the terms. All species will contribute ships and crews to the defense fleet, but human commanders will lead the battle groups. Jake walked to the main view screen, which showed dozens of ships moving in formation around Heritage. Some were architect vessels with human crews. Others were ships from various galactic species, all working together for the first time in history. "Keeper," Jake said to the ship's AI, "how is the training program progressing?" "Better than expected, Admiral Morrison. Humans adapt to architect technology much faster than the original projections suggested. Your species' natural curiosity and willingness to experiment has accelerated the learning process. Are we going to be ready in time?" Keeper was quiet for a moment before answering. "You will be as ready as possible. The architects had thousands of years to prepare and still failed. You have had less than 1 year. But you have something they did not have?" "What's that?" "Experience with conflict, knowledge of loss, understanding of what it means to fight for survival. The architects were builders and explorers. You are survivors and warriors." Lisa looked up from her console. "Admiral, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Earth. They want a status report on Project Guardian." Project Guardian was the code name for the massive effort to train human crews and activate more architect ships. In the past 6 months, it had become the largest military mobilization in galactic history. "Tell them we now have 23 active architect ships with trained crews. Another 15 ships are in the activation process. We estimate we'll have 40 ships ready for combat within 2 years. And the Great Hunger?" Jake looked at the long-range sensor display that showed the approaching threat. The red dots were still moving toward their galaxy, but they were getting closer every day. First contact in 4 years, maybe less. "We'll be outnumbered, but we'll be ready." Pete Harris, who had remained as Jake's pilot throughout all the changes, spoke up from the helm. "Admiral, incoming message from Captain Sarah Kim on the architect ship Destiny. She reports successful activation of the Sydney facility. That makes 12 ground-based architect installations now online." Jake smiled. Captain Kim had been one of the first humans to volunteer for architect ship training. Now she commanded one of their most powerful vessels. "Excellent. Every activated facility gives us more weapons, more supplies, more hope." Dr. Carter was reviewing reports on his medical scanner. "Admiral, I've been studying the psychological profiles of our new human crews. They're handling the responsibility well, but many are struggling with the pressure. Leading the defense of an entire galaxy is not something humans were prepared for mentally." Jake understood that feeling completely. 6 months ago, he had been exploring new star systems. Now he was responsible for saving all life in the galaxy. "We'll manage, Doctor. Humans have always found ways to handle impossible situations. It's what we do." Keeper's voice filled the bridge. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting new movement from the Great Hunger. They are accelerating their approach. Time to first contact has been revised to 3 years and 4 months." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Less time to prepare, less time to train, less time to activate the remaining architect ships. Jake took a deep breath and looked around at his crew. Humans and aliens working together, preparing to face the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. "All right, everyone," he said firmly. "We knew this wouldn't be easy. Keeper, send a message to all ships in the fleet. Begin advanced combat training immediately. Contact Earth and the Galactic Council. Tell them we're moving to accelerated readiness protocols." "Message sent, Admiral." Jake walked back to his command chair and sat down. Through the view screen, he could see the stars of his home galaxy, beautiful and peaceful. Soon those stars would be a battlefield. "Lisa, how many humans have volunteered for the defense fleet?" "Over 2 million, Admiral. More are volunteering every day." Jake nodded. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars. They were no longer just explorers or traders or diplomats. They were the guardians of the galaxy, the inheritors of an ancient responsibility. "Then we'll be ready," he said quietly. "Whatever comes, we'll be ready." In the depths of space, the Great Hunger continued its approach, unaware that this galaxy would not fall as easily as the others. This time, the Defenders had something new: the unpredictable, stubborn, adaptable spirit of humanity. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. Fleet Admiral Keswick stood on the bridge of his massive warship and watched the planet below burn. Orange flames covered the cities of Altair 7 like a deadly blanket. Black smoke rose into the atmosphere and blocked out the sun. The planet that had been green and full of life just 3 days ago was now a wasteland of ash and death. This was the 43rd world to fall under his command in 2 years. The Zephyrian Empire was unstoppable. Commander Vex walked across the metal floor of the bridge. His boots made sharp sounds with each step. He carried a datapad in his hands and his face showed no emotion. Vex had learned long ago not to feel anything when they destroyed worlds. It was just business for the Empire. He stopped next to Keswick and waited for permission to speak. The Admiral kept staring at the burning planet below. Finally, Keswick turned around. His cold blue eyes looked at Vex. The Admiral was tall and thin, with gray hair and scars on his face from many battles. He had been conquering worlds for the Empire since he was young. Now he was the most feared commander in the galaxy. When people heard his name, they surrendered without fighting. When they saw his ships, they knew death was coming. "What news do you bring me?" Vex asked Keswick. His voice was calm but dangerous. Vex looked at his datapad and began to read. "The Andromedans have surrendered completely, sir. They saw what happened to Altair 7 and decided not to fight. The Centauri Federation is offering us tribute if we spare their worlds. They will give us half their resources every year. 3 more systems in the Outer Rim have sent messages of surrender." Keswick smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered his prey. "Good," he said. "Fear spreads faster than our ships do. Soon the entire galaxy will bow to the Empire without us having to fire a single shot." He walked to the large window that showed space around them. Hundreds of Zephyrian warships floated in formation around his flagship. Each ship was the size of a small city and carried enough weapons to destroy a moon. The ships were black and silver with sharp edges that looked like knives. Their hulls were covered in weapons that could tear through any armor. Energy cannons that could melt mountains, missile launchers that could crack planets, harvester beams that could strip all life from a world in hours. The Zephyrian fleet was a weapon of war that no one in the galaxy could stop. Keswick activated a hologram that showed the galaxy. Red dots marked every world the Empire had conquered. Green dots showed worlds that had surrendered without fighting. Yellow dots were targets they planned to attack next. The red was spreading like a disease across the spiral arms of the galaxy. Soon everything would be red. Soon the Zephyrian Empire would rule everything. "Our technology is superior to anything these primitive species have," Keswick said to Vex. "Our ships can appear and disappear at will. Our weapons can destroy matter itself. Our shields can stop the combined firepower of entire fleets. We are like gods to these lesser beings. They worship us or they die. There is no middle ground." Vex nodded and made notes on his datapad. The Empire had been expanding for over 50 years. They had conquered thousands of worlds and enslaved billions of beings. Their technology came from ancient ruins they had found on their home world. Machines and weapons left behind by a race that had vanished long ago. The Zephyrians had learned to use these tools of war and had become the most powerful force in the galaxy. The door to the bridge opened, and Lieutenant Zara entered. She was young and nervous. Her hand shook as she carried another datapad. She had only been assigned to the flagship a few weeks ago, and was still afraid of Admiral Keswick. Everyone was afraid of him. He had killed officers for bringing him bad news. He had destroyed entire cities because someone insulted the Empire. "Speak," said Keswick without turning around. He was still looking at the hologram of the galaxy. Zara cleared her throat and tried to keep her voice steady. "Sir, we have received reports from our long-range scouts. They have found a new civilization in a remote part of the outer spiral arm. A species that calls themselves humans from a planet they call Earth." Keswick finally turned around. His eyes were cold and interested. "Tell me about these humans," he said. Zara looked at her datapad and began to read. "They appear to be a young spacefaring species, sir. They have colonies on a few planets in their system, but their technology seems primitive. They use chemical rockets and basic energy weapons. Their ships are small and slow compared to ours." Vex laughed. "Another primitive species that thinks it can challenge the Empire. They will surrender as soon as they see our ships, or we will turn their world into ash like we did here." Kessex held up his hand for silence. He was thinking about something. There was something in Zara's report that bothered him, but he could not figure out what it was. "What else do the scouts report?" asked Kessex. Zara looked nervous again. "Well, sir, there is something strange. Their electromagnetic signatures do not match their apparent technology level. The energy readings from their planet are much higher than they should be for such a primitive civilization. And there are some unusual readings from their moon and the outer planets in their system." Kessex stared at Zara for a long moment. His face showed no emotion, but inside his mind was working. In 50 years of conquest, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something about these humans was different. Something about their world did not fit the pattern. Every other primitive species had been exactly what they appeared to be. Weak, helpless, easy to conquer. But the energy reading suggested something else. Could the humans be hiding their true capabilities? Could they have technology that their scouts could not detect? It seemed impossible. The Zephyrian sensors were the most advanced in the galaxy. They could detect a single ship from light years away. They could analyze the molecular structure of a planet's atmosphere from across a solar system. Nothing could hide from them. "Prepare a standard invasion fleet," said Kessex finally. 12 destroyers, 4 harvesters, and my flagship. That should be more than enough to deal with any surprises these humans might have. But Vex, I want you to personally review all sensor data from the scouts. If there is something we are missing, I want to know about it before we arrive." "Yes, sir," said Vex. He made notes on his datapad and began to leave the bridge. Zara started to follow him, but Kessex called her back. "Lieutenant, you will accompany the fleet to this Earth. I want you to monitor all communications and energy readings personally. If these humans are more than they appear to be, we will discover their secrets before we destroy them." As the officers left the bridge, Kessex returned to the window. Below him, Altair 7 continued to burn. The flames would burn for weeks until there was nothing left but ash and rock. Soon Earth would look the same. Soon the humans would learn what happened to species that stood in the way of the Zephyrian Empire. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered that maybe this time would be different. Admiral Jack Harrison stood in the Orbital Defense Command Center and watched the stars through the massive windows. Earth floated below him like a blue and white jewel in the darkness of space. The new command station had been built in secret over the past 5 years. Most people on Earth did not even know it existed. They thought the strange construction in orbit was just another space station for scientific research. Harrison was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had served in the military for 30 years, but had never faced anything like what was coming. The deep space monitoring stations had been tracking the Zephyrian Empire for months. Every signal they intercepted told the same story. World after world falling to an enemy that seemed impossible to stop. An empire that crushed everything in its path. Captain Lisa Chen walked up to Harrison and handed him a data tablet. Her face was serious. "Admiral, the long-range sensors have detected movement at the edge of our solar system. Multiple large objects dropping out of hyperspace near Pluto. The energy signatures match what we have seen from Zephyrian fleets. They are here." Harrison looked at the tablet and saw the readings. 17 ships had appeared at the outer edge of the solar system. Each one was massive and heavily armed. The lead ship was 3 times larger than anything humanity had ever built, or at least anything they had built using conventional technology. Harrison pressed a button on his console and spoke into his communicator. "This is Admiral Harrison to all stations. Operation Guardian is now active. All personnel to battle stations. Activate the architect systems and prepare for contact. Remember what we have trained for. Remember what we are protecting. Today we show the galaxy that Earth will not kneel to any empire." On board the Devastator, Prime Admiral Kessex watched the blue planet grow larger on his main screen. The human world looked peaceful and defenseless. No massive orbital weapons platforms. No fleets of warships rushing to intercept his forces. Just a few small space stations and some primitive satellites. It was almost disappointing how easy this conquest was going to be. Commander Vex stood beside him with a satisfied smile on his face. "The humans appear to be even more primitive than our scouts reported, sir. I see no significant defenses, no advanced technology. This will be over in minutes. Should I begin the standard surrender broadcast, or shall we proceed directly to the demonstration of power? Kessex raised his hand for patience. Something still bothered him about the energy readings their scouts had detected. The electromagnetic signals from the planet were strange. Too organized, too purposeful. It was as if the humans were broadcasting signals they could not understand. Signals that seemed to come from technology far more advanced than chemical rockets and basic computers. "Begin the surrender broadcast," said Kessex finally. "Let us see how these humans respond to our generous offer." Lieutenant Zara activated the communication system and began transmitting on all frequencies that the humans used. The message was simple and had been used on hundreds of worlds before. "Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist and your planet will burn for 1,000 years." On Earth, the message was received at communication centers around the world. Military leaders and government officials gathered in emergency meetings. Fear spread through the halls of power as people realized that the stories from deep space had been true. An alien empire had come to destroy them. But Admiral Harrison was not afraid. He had been preparing for this moment for years. Harrison activated the response transmitter and sent a reply directly to the Zephyrian fleet. His voice was calm and steady. "This is Admiral Harrison of Earth Defense Command. We have received your message and we must respectfully decline your offer. We suggest you leave our solar system immediately. You are not welcome here and we will defend ourselves if necessary." On the Devastator Prime, the bridge fell silent. In 50 years of conquest, no species had ever responded with such calm defiance. Usually there was panic, screaming, desperate pleas for mercy. But this human admiral spoke as if he had the power to back up his words. As if he truly believed Earth could resist the might of the Zephyrian Empire. Vex looked confused and angry. "Sir, these primitives dare to refuse our generous offer. They think their pathetic technology can stand against us. Should we destroy one of their cities to show them the folly of resistance?" Kessex thought for a moment. The human's confidence was disturbing. No primitive species should be so calm when facing certain death. "No," said Kessex. "We will start with something smaller. Something that will demonstrate our power without destroying anything they truly value. Target their moon. One shot from our main weapon. Carve our symbol into its surface where they can see it from their planet. When they realize we can reshape their moon at will, they will surrender quickly enough." The weapons officer nodded and began charging the main cannon. The massive energy weapon could destroy a small asteroid with a single shot. It would easily carve a visible mark on the human moon. A demonstration that would break their spirit and save the Empire the trouble of a prolonged siege. The weapon reached full charge and the targeting system locked onto the lunar surface. "Fire," commanded Kessex. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the Devastator Prime toward the moon. The weapon that had destroyed planets and shattered moons struck the lunar surface with the force of 1,000 nuclear bombs. Every Zephyrian on the bridge expected to see rock and dust exploding into space. They expected to see their empire symbol burned into the moon's face. Instead, nothing happened. The energy beam simply vanished as if it had never existed. The moon remained unchanged. Not a single crater marked its surface. Not even a scorch mark showed where the most powerful weapon in the Zephyrian fleet had struck. The bridge fell completely silent. For the first time in decades, a Zephyrian weapon had failed to find its target. On the lunar surface, Captain Lisa Chen stood in the Lunar Defense Grid Control Center and watched the readings on her screens. The Zephyrian energy weapon had struck their quantum deflection barriers exactly as predicted. The ancient architect technology had absorbed the attack and redirected the energy harmlessly into space. Not a single joule had reached the moon's surface. Chen activated her communicator and spoke to Admiral Harrison on the orbital station. "Admiral, this is Lunar Defense. The enemy weapon has been neutralized. Quantum barriers are holding at full strength. All systems are operating within normal parameters. The moon is completely protected." She allowed herself a small smile. The Zephyrians had no idea what they were really facing. Back on the Devastator, Prime chaos erupted on the bridge. Officers ran diagnostics on their weapons systems. Technical crews checked power levels and targeting computers. Everything showed green. The weapon had fired perfectly. The energy beam had been at full power. The targeting had been precise. But somehow the attack had simply vanished without leaving any trace. Kessex stared at the moon through the main viewer. His face showed no emotion, but inside his mind was racing. In 50 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. Zephyrian weapons did not fail. They did not miss. They certainly did not disappear into thin air. Something was protecting the human moon. Something his sensors could not detect. Something that made their previous assumptions about human technology completely wrong. Dr. Richard Blake stood in the Architect Technology Division, deep beneath the Antarctic ice. The ancient chamber stretched out before him like a cathedral made of crystal and metal. Strange symbols glowed on the walls with soft blue light. Technology beyond human understanding hummed quietly in the darkness. This place had been hidden under the ice for millions of years until human explorers found it 50 years ago. Blake was a thin man with wild gray hair and eyes that seemed to see things others could not. He had spent his entire adult life studying the technology left behind by the race they called the Architects. Beings who had lived and died long before humans walked the earth. Beings who had faced a threat very similar to the one that now approached human space. The data screens around him showed the battle happening in space above. The Zephyrian attack on the moon had failed completely. Their most powerful weapon had been absorbed and redirected by quantum barriers that they could not even detect. Blake smiled as he watched the confusion on the enemy bridge through intercepted communications. They had no idea what they were really facing. His assistant, Dr. Susan Wright, walked up beside him. Her face showed excitement and fear in equal measure. Richard, the Architect systems are responding perfectly. The quantum deflection arrays are operating at full capacity, but the Zephyrians are bringing more ships into attack formation. They are preparing for a full assault on Earth itself. Blake nodded and placed his hand on a glowing control panel. The ancient technology responded to his touch like it was alive. Images flowed through his mind. Memories from the Architects themselves. He saw their civilization at its peak. He saw the enemy that had threatened them. An aggressive species that conquered through overwhelming force. A species very much like the Zephyrians. The Architects had developed defensive technologies specifically designed to counter such tactics. Quantum barriers that could absorb any energy attack. Temporal displacement fields that made accurate targeting impossible. Instantaneous communication across galactic distances. And most importantly, weapons that could strike through space and time itself without warning. Up in space, Admiral Kessex was losing his patience. His officers had run every diagnostic test possible on their weapons systems. Everything showed perfect operation. But somehow their attack on the human moon had simply vanished. Now the humans were broadcasting another message. The same calm voice of their admiral speaking as if he held all the power. This is Admiral Harrison to the Zephyrian fleet. You have fired upon our territory without provocation. This is an act of war. We have demonstrated that your weapons cannot harm us. We strongly advise you to leave our system immediately. If you do not withdraw, we will be forced to defend ourselves. You have 10 minutes to begin your departure. Kessex felt rage building inside him. These primitive humans dared to threaten the Zephyrian Empire. They spoke as if they had the power to make demands. As if their pathetic planet could stand against the might of the greatest military force in the galaxy. He would show them the price of defying the Empire. He would burn their world to ash and scatter their remains across space. All ships target the human planet, commanded Kessex. Focus all firepower on their largest cities. We will see how long their confidence lasts when their cities are burning. Every ship in the Zephyrian fleet turned toward Earth and charged their weapons. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust, prepared to fire on the blue world below. Harrison watched the enemy ships move into attack formation. He felt sadness that it had come to this. Humanity had hoped the Zephyrians would listen to reason, that they would see the futility of their attack and withdraw peacefully. But like so many aggressive species, they only understood force. Very well. If force was what they wanted, then force was what they would receive. Activate all defensive systems, ordered Harrison. Deploy the fleet. Show them what human ships can really do. Around Earth, space began to shimmer and twist. Reality itself seemed to bend as massive human warships phased into normal space. These were not the primitive chemical rockets the Zephyrians expected. These were vessels built with Architect technology that made them seem like ghosts made solid. Captain Stephen Wright stood on the bridge of the UHS Defiance as his ship materialized directly behind the Zephyrian formation. His vessel was sleek and silver with lines that seemed to flow like water. Energy coursed through its hull in patterns that hurt to look at directly. This was technology that could bend space and time. Technology that made the impossible seem routine. Wright smiled grimly as he looked at the enemy ships. For 50 years, these Zephyrians had terrorized the galaxy. They had destroyed countless worlds and enslaved billions of beings. They thought their technology made them gods. Today they would learn that gods could die just like anyone else. Today they would face weapons designed by a race that had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. Fire, commanded Wright. Quantum lances erupted from his ship with the power of miniature stars. The energy beams struck the nearest Zephyrian destroyer and passed through its shields like they were made of paper. The massive warship that had conquered dozens of worlds simply came apart at the molecular level. Metal turned to gas. Gas turned to energy. Energy scattered into the void. On the Devastator, prime alarm screamed as the bridge crew watched their escort ship simply cease to exist. The destroyer had been there one moment and gone the next. No explosion, no debris. It had simply been unmade by weapons that worked on principles they did not understand. Kessex stared at the empty space where his ship had been and felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. More human ships were appearing throughout the solar system. Each one moved in ways that defied the laws of physics as Kessex understood them. They phased in and out of normal space. They appeared behind his ships and fired before his gunners could even target them. They moved faster than light without using hyperspace drives. They were like nightmares made real. Commander Vex ran up to Kessex with terror in his eyes. "Sir, our shields are useless against their weapons. Our armor cannot stop them. They are cutting through our fleet like we are made of paper. We have lost 4 destroyers in as many minutes. Our most advanced defenses might as well be tissue paper against whatever technology they are using." Kessex watched another of his ships die. The humans were not even trying to capture Zephyrian technology. They were simply destroying his fleet with casual efficiency, as if his mighty warships were nothing more than insects to be swatted aside. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The humans were not primitive. They never had been. They had been hiding their true capabilities all along. For the first time in 50 years of conquest, Admiral Kessex gave an order he had never thought he would give. "All ships retreat. Emergency jump to hyperspace. Get us out of this system immediately." The mighty Zephyrian empire that had seemed unstoppable was running from a species they had thought was primitive. But as they fled, Kessex realized this was only the beginning. If the humans had this kind of technology, what else were they capable of? Admiral Harrison stood in the Architect Command Center and watched the galaxy map come alive with red warning lights. Each light represented a human ship appearing at a Zephyrian stronghold. Hundreds of lights, thousands of lights, ships materializing simultaneously across distances that should have taken years to cross. The impossible was happening in real time. Commander Karen Murphy rushed to his side with reports flowing in from across the galaxy. "Admiral, the Liberation fleets have reached their targets. All operations are proceeding on schedule. Kepler Station is under attack. The slave processing centers on Rigel 4 are being liberated. The main Imperial fortress at Vega Prime is surrounded. Every major Zephyrian installation is under simultaneous assault." Harrison nodded as he studied the tactical displays. The Architect Communication Network made this coordination possible. Information traveled instantly across the galaxy without delay. Orders given on Earth reached human commanders at the far edge of space in the same moment. For the first time in galactic history, an entire war was being fought as if it was happening in a single star system. On Kepler Station, Commander Troy Martinez materialized inside the main control room with his assault team. The Zephyrian guards turned in shock as 20 human soldiers appeared from thin air. Their weapons were already drawn and their phase shift armor shimmered like liquid metal. The aliens had no time to react before stun beams dropped them to the floor unconscious. Martinez looked around the control room that had been the center of Zephyrian power in this sector for 20 years. Computer screens showed the locations of every Imperial ship and base for light years around. Prisoner records listed the names of thousands of beings held in slavery. Resource extraction reports detailed the wealth stolen from dozens of conquered worlds. All of it was now in human hands. Sergeant Paul Davis approached with a data pad. "Sir, we have secured the main levels. Resistance was minimal. The Zephyrians were completely unprepared for our arrival. We have freed over 2,000 prisoners, including many high-ranking officials from conquered worlds. The station commander is demanding to speak with whoever is in charge. Tell him he can speak to Earth when we are finished here," said Martinez. "Right now we have more important work to do. He activated his communicator and contacted the rescue teams. This is Martinez to all units. Begin Phase 2. Free every prisoner and secure all intelligence data. We need complete records of Imperial operations in this sector. Meanwhile, on Rigel 4, Captain Amanda Torres and her Marines were conducting the largest rescue operation in galactic history. The slave processing center stretched across an entire continent. Millions of beings from dozens of species were held in massive compounds waiting to be shipped to Imperial work camps. The human rescue teams moved through the facility like ghosts, freeing everyone they found. Torres watched as her teams used architect technology to phase through solid walls and appear directly inside locked detention blocks. The Zephyrian guards found their weapons useless against human armor that could shift between dimensions. Energy beams passed harmlessly through soldiers who existed partially outside normal space. It was like fighting phantoms. Lieutenant Mark Cooper ran up to Torres with an urgent report. Captain, we have liberated the eastern sectors. Over 300,000 prisoners are free and ready for evacuation. But we have a problem. The Zephyrians are trying to activate the facility's self-destruct system. They would rather kill everyone than let them be rescued. Torres smiled coldly. Let them try. Our technical teams have been studying Zephyrian technology for months. Corporal Hayes, get to the main reactor and disable their self-destruct sequence. Use the quantum disruptors if you have to. We are not losing a single prisoner today. Not after coming this far. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds. Human forces appeared without warning at every Zephyrian installation. Orbital fortresses that had seemed impregnable fell in minutes. Fleets that had terrorized entire sectors were destroyed before they could even raise their shields. The empire that had taken 50 years to build was crumbling in a matter of hours. On the former Andromedan homeworld, Captain Roy Nelson stood in what had once been the planet's capital city. The Zephyrians had turned it into a military base after conquering the world 5 years ago. Now freed Andromedan citizens were emerging from hiding places they had used to survive the occupation. Many of them had never seen humans before, but they knew these strange beings had come to help them. An elderly Andromedan female approached Nelson with tears in her large golden eyes. She spoke in broken standard galactic language mixed with her own tongue. You came for us. After all these years, someone finally came for us. We thought the galaxy had forgotten we existed. We thought we would die as slaves to the Empire. But you remembered. You came to save us. Nelson felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. All across the galaxy, beings who had given up hope were being freed from imperial slavery. Species that had been scattered and broken were being reunited. Worlds that had been stripped of resources were being offered the chance to rebuild. Humanity had not just defeated the Zephyrian Empire. They had liberated an entire galaxy. Back on Earth, Admiral Harrison coordinated the massive operation from his command center. The quantum communication network allowed him to speak with field commanders across thousands of light years, as if they were in the same room. Reports flowed in constantly. Victory after victory, liberation after liberation. The Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had dared to hope. Commander Murphy approached with the latest intelligence reports. Admiral, we have confirmation from all sectors. Imperial resistance is crumbling. Their command structure has been completely disrupted. Most garrison commanders are surrendering rather than face our forces. We estimate that Zephyrian military power has been reduced by over 80% in the last 6 hours. Harrison studied the battle reports. The architect technology had made this possible, but it was human courage and determination that was making it work. Thousands of soldiers were risking their lives to free beings they had never met on worlds they had never seen. They fought not for conquest or glory, but for the simple belief that no one should live in slavery. As the hours passed, the impossible became reality. The Zephyrian Empire that had seemed eternal was dying. Their ships fled from battle rather than face human weapons. Their commanders abandoned their posts rather than fight enemies who could appear from nowhere. Their slaves were being freed faster than the Empire could even count its losses. On the bridge of his damaged flagship, Admiral Kessex listened to the reports with growing despair. Every stronghold was under attack. Every fleet was in retreat. Every base was either captured or destroyed. The empire he had served his entire life was being torn apart by an enemy that had appeared from nowhere, with technology beyond his understanding. Commander Vex approached with the latest casualty reports. Sir, we have lost contact with over 70% of our forces. The humans are everywhere at once. They appear inside our most secure facilities. They phase through our strongest defenses. Our weapons cannot hurt them, but their weapons destroy everything they touch. How is this possible? How can one species have such power? Kessex had no answer. In 50 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. The humans had technology that made the Empire look primitive. They had coordination that made Imperial tactics seem clumsy. Most importantly, they had something the Empire had never possessed. They had the will to fight not for themselves, but for everyone who could not fight back. And that made them unstoppable. Captain Dan Wilson walked through the corridors of the Devastator Prime with his boarding team behind him. The massive Zephyrian flagship that had terrorized the galaxy for decades was now a captured prize. Human soldiers moved through its halls like ghosts made solid. Their phase shift technology allowed them to pass through bulkheads and appear inside secured compartments without warning. Wilson found Admiral Kessex on the bridge surrounded by his remaining officers. The Zephyrian commander sat in his command chair like a broken man. His empire was gone. His fleets were scattered. His reputation as an unstoppable conqueror had been shattered by an enemy he had thought was primitive. The fear in his eyes was something Wilson had never expected to see from such a powerful opponent. Admiral Kessex of the former Zephyrian Empire, said Wilson, in a calm voice. You are under arrest for crimes against countless worlds and their peoples. You will be transported to Earth to await trial before a galactic tribunal. Your officers will be processed according to their level of involvement in Imperial war crimes. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. Kessex looked up at the human captain with confusion and something that might have been relief. A trial, not summary execution, not torture for information, not the brutal fate he had given to so many defeated enemies over the years. These humans were offering him something he had never given to others. Justice instead of vengeance. Law instead of brutality. It was more mercy than he deserved. How did you do it? Asked Kessex as Wilson's soldiers secured his hands. How did you appear everywhere at once? How did your weapons cut through our shields like they were nothing? How did one species defeat an empire that had conquered half the galaxy? What technology do you possess that we could not even detect? Wilson looked at the defeated admiral with something close to pity. We did not conquer the galaxy in a day, Admiral. We saved it in one moment. The moment we chose to act not for ourselves but for everyone who could not fight back. Your empire had the strength to ravage worlds, but we had something more powerful. The conviction that no one should have to face tyranny alone. On Earth, Admiral Harrison stood in the observation deck of the new Galactic Defense Headquarters. The facility had been built in orbit around Earth using a combination of human engineering and architect technology. Through the massive windows, he could see ships from dozens of species working together to construct a monitoring network that would span the entire galaxy. Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Adams approached with the latest reports from the Galactic Assembly. Admiral, the new charter has been ratified by representatives from all liberated worlds. The right of self-determination for all sentient species has been established. Conquest-based expansion is now prohibited under galactic law. Mutual defense agreements will protect smaller civilizations from future empires. Harrison nodded as he watched the construction work outside. Andromedan engineers worked alongside human technicians. Centauri scientists shared research with Earth academics. Former enemies of the Empire were becoming friends and allies. The galaxy was learning that cooperation was stronger than conquest. That building together was better than destroying alone. Dr. Richard Blake entered the observation deck carrying a data pad filled with technical reports. Admiral, the architect sites across the galaxy are responding to our presence. More technology is becoming available as we prove ourselves worthy of their legacy. The precursors left us tools not just for war but for peace, ways to share knowledge across impossible distances, methods for terraforming dead worlds, techniques for healing damaged ecosystems. Harrison took the data pad and reviewed the reports. The architects had been testing humanity all along. Their technology only responded to those who would use it responsibly. Species that sought power for its own sake would find nothing but empty ruins. But species that sought power to protect others would discover wonders beyond imagination. Humanity had passed the test not through strength but through wisdom. Commander Karen Murphy joined them at the observation windows. Sir, we have received formal requests for Earth to lead the new Galactic Defense Council. Over 200 species want humanity to coordinate their mutual protection. They have seen what we did to the Empire and they want us to ensure it never happens again. They want us to be the guardians of galactic peace. Harrison felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. Humanity had never asked to rule the galaxy. They had only wanted to protect their own world from an aggressive empire. But sometimes responsibility found those who were best equipped to handle it. Sometimes the greatest power went to those who wanted it least. "We will accept the role," said Harrison finally, "but with conditions. We will not rule. We will guide. We will not command. We will coordinate. Every species will retain their independence and their right to choose their own path. We will only act when aggressive empires threaten the peace. We will be guardians, not governors." In the detention facility beneath Earth's surface, Admiral Keswick sat in a comfortable cell and watched news reports from across the galaxy. Former Imperial slave worlds were rebuilding with human assistance. Species that had been scattered by conquest were reuniting with their lost colonies. Trade networks that had been disrupted by war were being restored. The galaxy was healing from 50 years of Imperial brutality. Captain Wilson visited him regularly to ask questions about Imperial operations. The human officer was always polite and professional. He brought news from the outside and answered Keswick's questions about human technology. Slowly, the former admiral began to understand what he had really been fighting. Not another empire seeking conquest, but a species committed to protection. "Why did you show mercy?" asked Keswick during one of these visits. "I conquered your worlds and enslaved your people. I would have destroyed Earth without a second thought. Yet you give me a trial and treat me with dignity. You feed me and house me and answer my questions. Why do you not simply execute me for my crimes?" Wilson sat down across from his prisoner and considered the question carefully. "Because, Admiral, showing mercy to our enemies makes us different from them. The Empire ruled through fear and brutality. We choose to lead through justice and compassion. If we became like you to defeat you, then we would have lost everything worth fighting for. Our strength comes not from our weapons, but from our principles." Years passed and the galaxy settled into a new pattern of peace. The Galactic Defense Network monitored space for signs of aggressive expansion. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had once been enemies. Scientific knowledge was shared across species boundaries. Children grew up in a galaxy where war was the exception rather than the rule. Admiral Harrison, now older and gray-haired, stood once again at the observation windows of the defense headquarters. The construction outside was finished. The monitoring network stretched across the galaxy like a web of light. Ships from hundreds of worlds patrolled trade routes and protected shipping. The dream of galactic peace had become reality. A young officer approached with the daily reports. "Admiral, all sectors are reporting normal activity. No signs of aggressive expansion anywhere in the galaxy. Trade is up 30% from last year. Scientific collaboration has produced breakthrough advances in medicine and agriculture. The refugee resettlement program has found homes for the last of the displaced populations." Harrison smiled as he looked out at the stars. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. Countless species lived in peace and prosperity, under the protection of the defense network. New civilizations were being discovered and welcomed into the galactic community. The future stretched ahead bright with possibility and hope. Somewhere in the depths of space, the architect ruins pulsed with ancient energy. Their creators were long gone, but their legacy lived on. They had left behind tools for those wise enough to use them responsibly. They had created tests for those strong enough to protect the weak. And they had given the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that true power came not from the ability to destroy, but from the choice to build something better.